Welcome back. You here with Goldberg. Today I'll be talking about the present financial situation and ways you can wrangle with it if you have concerns. I should say, if you're not certain you're going to have your job in 5 or 6 months, it's a shaky proposition. There's nothing wrong with paying down debt. This could be credit card, car loans, or even a mortgage if you have it. Now, some would go, I've got a lower interest rate. Why bother? I can make more in the stock market. It will depend on the individual situation. But eliminating a liability is effectively money in the bank because it's not compounding and adding up. When it comes to investments, I still strongly believe the vast majority of people should just maintain a 2 or 3 fund portfolio. Yeah, but you're not going to make as much money. Correct. But you also are going to avoid losing money. See, if you just were wise enough to pick 100% NVIDIA 5 years ago, sure, you did well. But if you picked NVIDIA and then you picked this company and that company and you spread it out and you only had maybe $1,000 in one, it might have done exceptionally well. But if you have 2 or 3 losers, now you have to ask yourself, do I try to average down till I can break even? Do I sell it off for tax harvesting? Do I have it sitting there for years, dead money until maybe the market gets interested again? It can be kind of depressing. Whereas if you just bought S&P 500 consistently, you may not have had as much of an appreciation, but you're not going to have a real period where you're completely red over time. And so you eliminate that emotional and psychological stress, trauma, whatnot. It's also the case where, and there's nothing wrong with buying, a big name that you think has a lot of the market share, but you have to just remember, even with the concept of value investing, there's those memes now, people tossing the Ben Graham book in the trash. Because as we found, just because a company has a good quarter, it can still be shellacked by the market. Whereas another entity that is just based upon hype and has no revenue, it'll keep skyrocketing. This is why my view is you are better off just getting with these funds. Also, remember, with all the shorting going on, all the manipulation, which this past couple weeks, that's what it's been. It's people playing against it because they want to make money short term, boost their performance. I think it should be banned. All of this trying to bet against a value of a share. If you really want the company, you purchase it. If you don't want to hold it long term, you swing trade. But you don't get to just always be hoping things fail. That should be completely removed. I don't care if it's an investment bank or an individual. Same thing with the crypto markets being 24/7 and the ability to short crypto should not exist. And we're having that mentality creep in here where people just think this is a meaningless coin that was created yesterday and just pump it up. It has no utility, no value. It's just more of this popularity contest. You can look back to, what was that guy's name? Roaring Pussy with the GameStop. And they did some damage to a hedge fund, but also people who followed him lost money. There's no situation where everyone gets together and just wins, although the closest to that is you just buy those index funds. Some people do VTI, VXUS as a combo. I like S&P 500, SPLG called Splooge, or now SPYM. You can pair that with an SCHF for international funds, or SCHV value. I also have a decent amount of a CHD in my Roth. And some people say, oh, you should be more growth oriented. But that fund, it's conservative, it's less into tech. So you're not putting everything on NVIDIA or Tesla just to be successful, which they probably will anyway. Providing you're looking for some more diversification, I mentioned KSA, the Saudi Arabia fund. My investment in Chile is doing quite well, and this is EWS, which is the Singapore ETF. So you've got somewhat high expense ratio, 0.5, but yield is 3.69%. Singapore is the Switzerland of Asia. Is it possible that China will invade? Maybe. More than likely, they would just have some cooperation agreement economically. The biggest headwind to Singapore is their absolutely atrocious birth rate. But maybe they can ameliorate the situation by importing Chinese, Thai, and Indians, although that might not actually fix anything. Let's keep going. Regarding crypto, I still have my XRP, which probably won't go anywhere. There's talk about Ethereum possibly accelerating in the near future. All of this is speculative, to be clear. Bitcoin, I remain agnostic. Now, I moved another large chunk to a cold storage wallet, and I continue buying. Obviously, if your average price is 1,000, you have a much larger buffer. You're not terribly concerned. The main issue I see with Bitcoin going forward is that now we have the entire market and governments involved, and some of them are shorting it. They're seeing it as they can pump and dump to get their profits, make their people, their shareholders happy. The only issue with that would be all this institutional money, whales. Can we sustain or keep seeing the price grow simply because there's a limited number of them in circulation, or there will be once they're finally all the mining has been finished? Or is it going to be treated as just another thing that you can trade in and out of? That's the worry I have. Does the retail market really have the capacity to bid it up to $50 million? Or would you need all of these funds, government stimulus, streaming into? Or what happens if they determine here's something that's like Bitcoin, maybe a little bit better, more secure, if you will. There's that whole quantum computing meme, which I don't take seriously. Nonetheless, if it's only $100 a coin, they go into that and they can pump it up. They realize, well, this might be an alternative. What happens to the Bitcoin price? Now, Bitcoin, because they can't create more than a certain number, it still would be anti-inflationary to an extent, but that does not necessarily mean it will go to those insane price levels. So we'll have to see, but I'm not going to sell. With precious metals, we had a copper run up earlier this year, and then of course gold was spiking. I don't view them as necessarily a way to get wealthy, but more of that you should have it in your family to some degree. So I go on eBay and I have more silver than gold, yeah, fortunately. I buy primarily Walking Liberties and Franklins. I also get some smaller denomination, like I think I have some Austrian gold coins, little gold grams, which are very small. You have to be careful not to lose them. I wanted to get a bar when they were at Costco, but none of the ones around me had them in stock or actually carried them, period. Because if you got them at that price point when they were first being popularized with the Costco credit card, you got a pretty good deal. So that's to me something that goes into a safe. Hopefully, you never have to use it. I mean, realistically, if you look at a lot of this generation, the Zoomers, they're not going to have any of those precious metals. So they're going to have to turn tricks to survive. If we get to Mad Max, and let's hope and pray that doesn't occur. So now we come to some possible career moves for Goldberg. And I have this insane yet passionate obsession with picking up some part-time hours at Mickey Donald's. 13 bucks they pay. It's a living wage. And just imagine the content. You might say I'm crazy. I am undergoing some trauma right now because I thought I was getting some more eggnog. I was at a person's house. I pour a glass of it and it was spoiled eggnog, which I've never experienced. And I can't even comprehend that that would exist. You understand? You get it? So with McDonald's, I was there last week because they have good Wi-Fi. And I usually just get a decaf coffee, a couple of those imitation milk carcinogen packets. So I am set up, working on my book. Across the way, as in the zoo, the restaurant, there's this Latina with her much older husband, and she's on the phone in Spanish, which is like nails on the chalkboard. I think it's almost worse than the Punjabi accents. Well, at least they were in their own realm, but they began moving in my direction. I was like, where's this border wall? Well, I'm sitting on a cushioned bench seat up against the window. She gets maybe 5 feet away from me, lies down, sticks her ass up, and continues talking. Her husband's standing up meekly, Vamonos, vamonos, and she just ignores him. Finally, they left, which was ideal because I was on the verge of just blasting loud music. Like, what was that one TV show? We were made to make history. The anime. I was just gonna do that. Make it as disruptive as possible. Once they're gone, you have this other couple that arrives, and so it's a brunette, semi BBW, with her 5-year-old daughter, and she was meeting her husband, a blue-collar bald cell with a big beard and glasses. He looked kind of frustrated. He had just probably departed his place of labor. So the little girl's running around being disruptive, and he keeps going, stop, sit down, eat your nuggets, have your soda, whatever. And she, no, I don't have to listen to you. I do whatever I want. It doesn't take too long before the mom begins berating him. No, you keep your mouth shut. She's not doing anything incorrect. You're the one who's the problem. and he's just getting dressed down. And I see this all the time with couples, man. When a woman does that, if she's not already cucking you, it's only a matter of time. You're probably going to end up divorced. So this continues for a bit, and then he said, "Honey, let's go." "No, you can go. I'm staying right here." I'm not sure if they went to the bathroom together, as in the two women, or maybe they departed, but he was just sitting there, his face full of rage pilling. He's watching a Diary of a CEO video. And I was like, man, I just want to walk by him because I'm about to leave and say, you need to file for divorce. Or maybe I should print up some leaflets with a QR code that leads to a Stardust or pull a Proteus video. I'm going to become like one of those guys 10 years back who would say, carry around a Sharpie and write MGTOW on the bathroom walls. It reminded me because a few weeks back I went to Jersey Mike's for an Italian sub, and it's a very inconvenient parking lot, lots of traffic. Well, as I was approaching it, I saw this brother riding around one of those bikes with the tiny wheels. I don't know what they call them. This is not a teenager, mind you. He was late 30s or early 40s, salt and pepper beard. Well, I parked nose in towards the berm, the trees, the barrier, whatever. I get my sandwich and I come out. Once I had returned, there was this couple parked same way with their little SUV. When I say a couple, it was the woman, the German Shepherd, and then the male companion. Well, I start backing out, and I'm always very cautious because I notice that people don't pay attention. So I saw they're heading in, all right, gradually moving out, and this brother slides right past up against nearly the trunk of the car. I was going, what the hell are you doing? You can clearly see I'm trying to exit, and there's plenty of room for you to pass where you're more visible. So I don't know if he was trying to lawsuit hunt, but this kind of sketchy behavior seems to be all over the place. And don't blame it on systemic racism because, I invented that stuff. Another job that Goldberg would really be fascinated by is being a CO, but in a women's prison. Just imagine, how would hypergamy work? You've got those shows in Kentucky where they arrest some Stacy for dealing meth. Would she, if she's incarcerated, look at a normie guard as someone she has to simp for? A friend of mine, he was a prison sentinel out in Colorado some years back, and he said there was this one girl, Latina, of course, if you fed her candy, she would blow you, which is pretty awesome. And then she'd report you to the administration, get you fired. When it comes to ICE, the process is moving forward. It's funny because the feds will do this. You hear nothing, and then suddenly there's this deluge of requirements with like a 24-hour deadline, 48 hours. If you don't make it, you're automatically disqualified. So I'll have to soldier through it steadily. Would require me to relocate, would be a bit of an overhaul, but potentially exciting in the sense that you might be going after like child traffickers, which is a very noble cause. And we have that issue not just with illegal immigrants, but also legal ones. You see these hotel chains, child prosies, they're trying to market child labor. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of work to do, and that's why it's important for people to be vigilant and not just call post and be resigned and doomer all the time. I'm sure I'll get a comment like, yeah, but Goldberg, come 2029, you will be a defendant at the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal. And that's entirely possible. I could be accused of taking the soy is greener approach. And why not just do Harry Brown, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, live your life, stay under the radar? Ironically, that's more or less what I've done the last 5 or 6 years, and I've accomplished some good things. I've built wealth. I have produced some useful literature for people, and I'm not against it continuing forward. It's just that when you see the number of folks online spouting off, they got these principles, these ideas, these values, the world needs to change, and then they're just petrified. They can't move. They think something's going to happen. I'll be scrutinized. I don't care, come what may. You don't know how long you have to still go. That Schlossberg sister, she's 35 and she's about to RIP. I don't know if it's because she took the pincushion or something else, but sitting there being so obsessed about, at any moment, yeah, at any moment you could be gone. So don't be so fixated. The other position I'd put in for, which might have been 2 weeks or possibly as much of a month later, that deals more with the legal side of the equation. If I hear about some prospects in that direction, I could consider it. I'd probably be able to do my current gig in tandem. And the other thing is this boomer I was talking to last week, he was working a job and he said, "You do really well at this. You can apply here." He said it's good pay and benefits. He left because there was a Karen boss, but he said she has departed. And that would be another option. That's primarily in the realm of kind of the Harry Brown stuff. It's just, generate GDP and retire early, which I'm already on track to do. With that noted, I'm also weighing the possibility that if I stayed local, did one of these jobs, I might also put in for Air Force or Coast Guard Reserve. And that's something I've always wanted to do. Remains the question of medical clearance, because for me, it's never been physical ability, mental acuity, personal conduct. It was literally just vision, which is to say, I see perfectly fine, but the astigmatism was too high. They rejected me despite the fact I had no eye disease on that foundation. You can get a waiver, but being something like Coast Guard, they're small, are they going to give it to you? So that's the wild card to contend with. But I generally see it as something that would be nice. You can have protection for your existing employment, and then if you actually do get activated, you volunteer for something, you can't lose your job. So that's a nice setup. Whether you would be able to get enough of them to where you can make an argument towards VA claims, that's not guaranteed. I will say some of these kids I've known, they're mid, late 20s. They have VA, payouts, and they're making like 3 or 4K a month tax free. They don't care about inflation. They're living like boomers. And then they have their regular job and they've got like 3 new cars, really nice pad. That's a life that I don't blame anyone because of how America is. The economic system can be pretty screwed up. I don't blame people for if you went in, you served, you did your time, you put up with the BS. I think you should take advantage of it. But that would be a way, let's say with Coast Guard, if I did Marine law enforcement, that would be a way to kind of do something similar to ICE, but also maintain more of what I have right now. So you guys can give me your thoughts on that if you have any background. And if there's any other jobs that you think, we will see these YouTube videos, people struggling, any recommendations you can give. I've mentioned some in the past, but it's not that you can't get employment. It can depend on where you are. Sometimes it is a question of not wanting certain jobs, and I have seen that. Or maybe you feel like it doesn't provide enough income to be worthwhile with the existing economy. But yeah, let's discuss.